Hello and welcome in to the Dynasty After Party with myself and Joel Wirth here at Club Fantasy FFL. Good to see everyone with us. We have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about the rookie running backs. Listen, we're not excited about this class, but there are a lot of gems in the rough here and a lot of options for NFL teams and therefore for fantasy rosters that I'm going to be so excited to talk about with my good pal Joel, who's looking especially handsome today. I'll just say he's backstage. He hears me. He just did a double take, and you'll get to see him in a second. Talk about all that. We have the Stefon Diggs trade. We have the Rashee Rice nonsense. We have a lot to dive into today. So, without further ado, let's get right into the show. You know, Joel, it's a lovely, Sunday morning here, but I can't help but feel like you were I need you to just share with me, Joel, why you felt surprised when I said that you looked handsome this morning. That's my concern right now because you look handsome every day, and I feel concerned.
Yeah, I don't feel like I look any different than I normally do, but yeah, I appreciate it.
Whatever. We're all about positivity on the Dynasty After Party.
For sure.
All right. Yeah. Well, either way, we do have a good lineup today, and we have honestly a ton of news, some of which I almost forgot about since our last show was Friday. But yeah, the Texans have landed their new wide receiver in Stefon Diggs. Rashee Rice has been a dumbass and done some dumb stuff. All that we're going to have to talk about because it's significant dynasty implications for both those guys and the guys around them. So, you want to jump right into it, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot going on this weekend, right? It's the Final Fours in both men's and women's, which are huge. You got WrestleMania, which was really good last night, and looking forward to tonight. So, yeah, let's hit it.
Yeah, for once, it feels like April is not like I'm saying this before the 2-week downtime between this and the draft, but April's off to a good start in terms of at least in sports activity happening. But let's start with Stefon Diggs going over. Oh, that's a misspell on Stefon Diggs, isn't it? Stefon Diggs is heading over to Houston. What an interesting trade this was because it wasn't for too much, for a 2025 second, and it was very much a clean break of this was a lot more about the behind the scenes stuff, the drama with Stefon Diggs, but we saw hints of in Minnesota and we've seen hints of in Buffalo. And now he's a Houston Texan. So I'm curious on what your thoughts on what the Stefon Diggs trade for a 2025 second.
I think this was a punt by Buffalo just to get out from underneath him and the like we said earlier in the year that we expected him to be traded because of the contract, and then we saw that was before the huge salary cap increase. So okay, maybe they're going to hold on to him, maybe not. So eventually they got a deal. I think this is probably the best they could do to get a second. It's next year's second, but to get a second for him feels like this is kind of a punt on their season. This kind of a reset of their window, and like this just goes to show that, man, windows close in the NFL really fast, right? You had Josh Allen. You think he's going to be around for a long time. You're going to have that window. And then you got 17 seconds in Kansas City. You've got a no-show in the playoffs against Cincinnati at home. And then you miss a field goal. It's like all of a sudden that, now they've got a bunch of injuries on defense. They've got a bunch of, free agent losses on defense. Their defense got old. They lose Mitch Morse, their center. So, yeah, it feels like they're kind of resetting and kind of to make a run at a second window. So, yeah, it feels like a stretch to say they're not going to be a playoff team, but are they the AFC's loaded? I could legitimately see a scenario where they just don't make the playoffs this year.
It really comes down to what we get out of the AFC East, right? Because we don't know. Will the Jets be able to put it all together for the first time in decades? Will the Dolphins be able to replicate last year's success while cleaning up last year's errors? No, we know the answer about the Patriots. But, the Bills, ultimately, they missed the key window. They missed the rookie contract Josh Allen window. And that's such a shame because, like you said, they had so many chances to do that, to get over that hurdle, and they just didn't. So now things are going to get tougher. They're going to have to make tough decisions like this, like we saw with Kansas City shipping off Tyreek Hill. And what clip that went viral again of Tom Brady golfing with Josh Allen, with Patrick Mahomes, with Aaron Rodgers. And Tom Brady saying, okay, if Rodgers lost Devontae, Mahomes, you lost Tyreek. Josh, someone's going to leave you eventually. That's word for word with Tom Brady. Someone's left him. Now we're going to see what Josh Allen's made of. But ultimately, my feelings with this trade, I feel a little bit on the contrarian side of this one, Joel. And I think we're on the same mindset, actually, because I immediately tried to trade Stefon Diggs to you, and you had nothing to do with it. This deal is going to age well for Buffalo. This is almost any time where I see someone, and whenever I see someone getting traded like this, later stages of the career, we saw a significant downturn in usage over the back half of the season. You could chalk that up to the offensive coordinator and not to the talent of Stefon Diggs, who probably is still a dominant receiver. I don't think we've seen complete fall off, but I'm concerned about all that this implies of heading into a very crowded receiver room in Houston. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Houston. I don't think Stefon Diggs is going to be demanding targets as much as he wants to demand targets usually.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here. I think, to me, this reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins, and we talked about this. I think this reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins last year, except Buffalo got something back. Like, Steph Diggs is on the wrong side of 30. He's kind of been he's been a malcontent. Let's not sugarcoat it. Yes. He's been a malcontent. He's, whether you want to call him a locker room cancer or not, we're not in the locker room. We don't know, but from the outside, it kind of appears that way. So like I said, and like you said, for them to get a second, I think is a pretty good return. Even though it kind of leaves their receiver room kind of barren, right? They got a couple slot guys and Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, but they lost Gabe Davis. So really they don't have any outside receivers. And you look at Steph Diggs, the last 2 seasons, he's kind of no-show. Like, fantasy players know, he has no-showed kind of at the end of the season. Like last year and the year before in 22, he just, he had these kind of dominant stretches for the first 10 weeks or so, and then just kind of disappeared. So I think the end is, I don't know that we're getting peak Steph Diggs anymore. I have 0 Steph Diggs shares, and I'm okay with that. And like you said, you sent me a Steph Diggs trade offer, and I'm not interested in adding him. Like, my immediate instinct was to go out and send a bunch of 95 cents on the dollar Nico College offers, because I
did send those out too, where I don't have them.
Yeah. I think my problem is I have a lot of Nico College shares. So the situation.
What a terrible problem.
Yeah. The situations aren't necessarily there for me to kind of make those trades. And we've seen, like, somebody on Twitter posted the other day where they got Nico Collins for like a second and I don't know, some trash. It's like, okay, those deals may be there in kind of niche leagues, but they're not there in kind of the real world, because I've made trades much better than that and kind of gotten shot down. So I think Nico Collins is the one there. I don't think that changes anything. If anything, this may hurt Tank Dell a little bit, because it's probably pushes him into the wide receiver 3 role. Not necessarily just he's the slot, but I think he's the clear wide receiver 3 now. And so in 2 wide receiver sets, I think he's going to go off the field. So I think this may ding him a little bit. But like dynasty wise, I would still rather have Nico and Tank Dell over Diggs.
Yeah, as would I. Tank Dell being, I was going to say a little bit closer, but not really. Yeah, I would rather both those guys significantly at this point. Good morning to Chasing Ships as well as Gator J. Chasing Ships, adding about the WrestleMania.
Happy WrestleMania. Yep.
Happy WrestleMania. Gator adding as well that the player that this trade hurts most is Dalton Schultz, with Tank Dell moving inside, Diggs and Collins on the outside. I imagine he's going to say, where does that leave Dalton Schultz? I feel similar. Like, to me, this strikes me as an offense is going to feel very similar to what we see in Los Angeles with Sean McVay, where we're seeing a ton of like 70% 11 personnel with the 3 wide receiver sets, and you'll have some decent games from Dalton Schultz where he's the Tyler Higbee. He happens to catch 2 touchdowns on the week. He might catch a touchdown, and everyone else on the week does terrible, so he ends up as the tight end 4. There's going to be weeks where Schultz is going to be usable, but I do think I'm aligned with you, Gator, on this one, that it's going to be very up and down for Dalton Schultz, which, to be honest, I feel like we kind of saw coming one way or another with Dalton Schultz.
Yeah. So first of all, good morning, Gator. Thanks for stopping in. I agree. I I think this hurts Schultz a lot. I guess I wasn't even considering him as part of the offense, but so real quick, I put some CJ Stroud trades in the show sheet to go over.
Yes.
I did make a Dalton Schultz trade this morning. 12-team Superflex non-tight end premium. I got Hawkinson and Gus Edwards for Dalton Schultz and David Montgomery.
I like it. I
don't think Schultz has any value in a non-tight end premium. I don't care about it.
He's a streamer. He's the tight end 6 to 10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's Pat Freiermuth, basically. Like you said, he's gonna have a few. All right, sorry. He's gonna have a few smash games, but he's not a guy I'm gonna trust to put in the lineup every week because there's gonna be zeros. There's gonna be weeks that he just doesn't get targeted.
You would say Cole Kmet instead. I feel like that's more fair.
Okay, all right, that's fair. I should say Cole Kmet. I apologize for that.
Yeah, we got your CJ Stroud trade up here. 12-team starting 11 tight end premium. CJ Stroud for Dak Prescott and the 105.
So I immediately, like when this trade happened, you saw CJ Stroud being talked about as a tier 1 quarterback, and I saw people say they would rather have Stroud than Josh Allen, which is insane. But
I saw that as well. It's nuts.
We'll move off of that. So my first instinct, obviously, is if people think CJ Stroud is a tier 1 quarterback, what can I trade him for? What can I get? And I've got a pretty decent amount of Stroud shares because, like last year, I liked him considerably better than Bryce Young in the leagues where I had those kind of picks. That's where I was going. So I got a decent amount of shares. So I was willing to move off. So in this league, it's a start 11. I got Dak Prescott and the 105. So I went down a couple tiers probably, but like Dak is still a viable starting quarterback. And I get the 105. So
it could be Bowers in a tight end premium. Yeah, it's a Bowers in a tight end premium, your pick of a top 3 quarterback or one of the big 3 receivers. Wherever you want to go with it.
In this league in particular, I have Mahomes and Burrow. Like obviously, a good problem to have, right? So Stroud was extraneous, or one of those was extraneous. I didn't need it as long as I get a quarterback back to kind of be my solid QB3. So I get an impact player or an impact prospect, at least in the 105 in a start 11 where that extra body is valuable. So yeah, this is a deal I'm doing all day long.
Yeah, I'm all for it. And I agree with you that as much as we both love CJ Stroud, and as much as everyone loves CJ Stroud, this is as high of his value as it's going to be for a while, honestly. Because if we're talking about him as the QB1, but Patrick Mahomes still exists. Josh Allen still exists. Those guys are not going away anywhere, let alone anybody else that, the Justin Herberts, even the Dak Prescotts of the world, the people that could jump into the big tiers based on volume and system. Those players still exist. I think that's where CJ Stroud is. He's on the rise and he can make that jump. He's certainly a top 5 dynasty quarterback, but if we can trade him for QB1, QB2 value, then trade him for QB1, QB2 value. So I'm all about that. I'm all about that.
So let's talk about Stroud real quick. There's no path for him to be a Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen. He doesn't run enough. He doesn't want to run enough. That's good for the Texans. It's not good for fantasy. It's like his ceiling is Joe Burrow, right? How much better can he be than he was last year? Obviously, he can play. He missed a couple of games with a concussion. He can play those games, and that'll kick his numbers up a little bit. That offense was pretty efficient. It wasn't like he was just carrying that offense. So, what does he have? For a guy like that to get into the top tier, he needs to basically have like a Patrick Mahomes 50 touchdown season. Is that reasonable? I don't think so.
That's what I want to point out though, because I think and correct me if I'm wrong, we might disagree on this, but I think it is reasonable. I think it's possible, like in terms of, no, I'm not going to say he's going to have 50 yards, right? Or 50 touchdowns. I'm not going to say he actually pulls that off, but this is a Texans team that is built to be a top 3 passing attempt team. This team is going to be airing it out left, right, center, up, down, diagonal, across, whatever. He's doing all that. And then, if you look at this running back room, the one thing they haven't really touched is running back room. They lost Devin Singletary. I guess they're going to add someone in the draft. They add Joe Mixon. Yeah. This team's built to average 40.
They paid Joe Mixon. They paid Joe Mixon and they extended Joe Mixon. That means they want Joe Mix. They want a running back.
I think they want more than they got last year, but I think when push comes to shove, and push will come to shove, it's going in the arm of CJ Stroud, especially with, this receiving room that they got. They're a team that's built to pass the ball more than they're a team that's built to run the ball, in my opinion. I think
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So that's what it's going to come to is a team building around their strength, and their strength is CJ Stroud.
Yeah, for sure. He's the focal point of that offense. There's no question, and he is the biggest winner of this trade because he's the winner.
Yeah.
He's the winner of this trade, right? But I just Patrick Mahomes is in that kind of top tier. Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the rushing upside that Hurts or Josh Allen do, but he has shown the ability to throw for 50 touchdowns. He's done it, and he's shown the ability to do something similar to that consistently. Could I see CJ Stroud having a 50 touchdown season? Sure. Is it something I expect from him to do season after season to at least approach 50 touchdowns? I don't you're going to lose Bobby Slowick after next year, right? It's going to be a different offense.
Most likely.
So Patrick Mahomes has had Andy Reid, the perfect guy calling his offense for the entirety of his career, right? And there's no reason to expect him to go away anytime soon. So I just don't think there's that continuity of expectation that this offense is going to be talented, no question, but you're going to change systems at some point. And Stroud just does not have the rushing upside. Not that he can't do it. He doesn't want to do it, and he shouldn't do it because the offense doesn't require that. The offense isn't predicated on that ability. So yeah, I think it's a stretch to put him in that top tier of guys like Allen and Hurts or Mahomes, who have done the 50 touchdown thing and have the ability to do it consistently.
I understand that. The only other counter I would say is just that I'm not going to fault the talent of a player, or I'm not going to I'm not going to pass on the player because their coach might leave, or like we said, he probably will leave. Right? Bobby Slowick will probably get a chance to be either a head coach or I don't know, something more than that even somewhere else. If he's I don't know, he'll be a CEO. But I don't know. I was trying to think of something because I'm just thinking of Houston, how much Houston will pay the man to keep him. But he'll even if he leaves, I mean, CJ Stroud's talent's not changing. I'm not gonna worry about that as much. But what I agree with you on is that I think CJ Stroud will need to be in top 5 passing attempts to finish in the top 5 for fantasy, and that's a must, right? We need a Drew Brees type of volume. We need them to air it out nonstop. And I think they will do that because that's what Houston's built to do right now. I don't think they want to give the ball to Joe Mixon 16 times a game. I think they can. I think they might do it in the fourth quarters when they're actually starting to win games that have come from behind. But for the first half, I think they're going to be slinging it 30 times. They're going to be this team is a good roster to build to do the passing game. It's going to be so fun to watch. It's going to be fun.
This is legitimate Super Bowl contender for sure.
Yeah, it's things change in the NFL, huh? Things change quickly in the NFL. Let's touch on the Rashee Rice situation a little bit before we touch on the Dynasty rookie running backs in this class. So obviously everyone knows at this point Rashee Rice got in the not great situation of a multi-car accident because he was speeding on a highway in his fancy car. 10 grams, was it 10 grams? I don't know. He also had weed on him. But not a felony amount, which was a incorrect report that was going around initially. It's not a felony amount that he had on him. It's a minor misdemeanor. And don't make fun of me, Joel. In Texas, say. So whatever. So either way, things are up in the air for Rashee Rice right now. It's not great. He's very lucky that he didn't hurt anybody or himself. So thank goodness for that. But ultimately, neither of us are lawyers, neither of us are NFL executives, but what are you expecting to come out of this situation?
So big picture, this is basically the Jalen Carter thing from last year, right? Except Rashee Rice is in the league and Jalen Carter wasn't, right? So the league didn't have any jurisdiction on Jalen Carter last year. Obviously, the act was the same, but the result was worse in Jalen Carter's case, and the 2 people died. Here, it just turned into a serious accident, but no major injuries. So I don't care about the weed as long as it's not a felony. a distribution amount, as long as he's not like a drug dealer and he had that stash in his car. I don't care about the weed, because the league has shown they're kind of leaning toward, they understand that weed's a thing, and they're just not going to be able to legislate it out. So I don't care about that. My concern is the judgment, right? Just why are you being so stupid, right? You're an NFL player. You've got all the money in the world. You've got the world at your feet, and you're still doing stupid shit like this. Why? This is the same thing as Jameson Williams gambling last year. It's like, I don't care about I care about this act. I don't care about Jameson Williams gambling. I care about the fact that he has such poor judgment that he would do this. And it's the same thing with Rashee. Obviously, this is a much more serious thing than gambling. But, dude, why are you doing this? Why are you street racing a Lamborghini when you have everything to lose? So that seriously calls his judgment into question. Do I think anything is going to happen? I think something is going to happen, but it depends on how fast the league acts on it. Or excuse me, it depends on how fast the league's not going to do anything until this plays out in the courts. So, if Texas just kind of whitewashes this and it's no big deal, I still think, he's going to face a suspension, whether it's a game, whether it's 2 games. Maybe it's 8 games, depending on how bad this gets. Like we heard, he walked away from the scene with a bag of guns. Like that's a big deal. Now, how easy or hard is that going to be to prove? I have no idea. Probably really hard. But if that's kind of proven, then that's a big deal. That's a very serious deal. So there's 2 things that kind of derail Rashee Rice here. One is the league. 2 is the Chiefs. Right? If they take a receiver they just added Marquise Brown, if they take a receiver at 32, Rashee Rice's value.
They very well could. They very well could.
And so, we can say that, okay, the league's probably not going to do anything. It may not affect him this year. Let's move on. It's not that simple. If the Chiefs look at this like I do and say, dude, what the F? What are you doing? Okay, we can't trust you. We're going to draft a A.D. Mitchell. We're going to draft a Xavier Worthy. We're going to draft Ladd McConkey. Rashee Rice's value is tanked. It's gone. So I think there's a lot to worry about this if you're a Rashee Rice manager. I've got a lot of shares. I'm nervous. I'm very, very nervous about this. I've started selling. I made one deal we'll talk about. Like, I'm not selling for nothing. I'm not giving him away, but I'm very nervous. If I can get any first for him, I'm taking it.
Would you take the 112 and a 1 QB? Yes. There we go. There. Oh, okay. I think I would still send that for him. I think I would still send that for him. And Gator asked a good question as well about what are we actually selling him for. So you would sell him for the 112. I'm moving to crack top 10 and a 1 quarterback. Because I'm ashamed to say that I did float a few offers out there when this happened. Not when it happened, but once we got a few more details. And I think the big thing that is going to come out of this, and it's a huge distinguishing feature, and something that we need to remember, is that for days we didn't know Rashee Rice was even the driver, right? And that key piece of information that now we know he was the driver, can settle that. But the fact that we didn't know that means that there's no report of at the time, whether he was carrying guns out or something like that. No one knows because nobody was even sure he was there initially until he copped to it. Whether there was something in the car and whether it was him or whether it was a passenger, we don't know. Nobody was there at the time. So there's so much unknown with this case. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to be speculating, but there's so much that didn't come out until Rashee Rice volunteered the information himself that I feel like it's going to be so difficult to roll the book at him if they want to do that. That said, I do agree that I do feel like a suspension will be coming down the pipeline, but we'll see if it comes down that way. Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't want to get too much into this because we have our wide receiver show next week. And I got to say, A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell, my guy of this class, I think. I think it's going to be my guy of this class at wide receiver. All about him. So that said, I would take it, Adonai Mitchell over Rashee Rice. But, it's always hard to see where the rookie – it's always hard for me to choose a rookie before we know where he goes in the draft and exactly draft capital too.
We can project and say let Rashee Rice or Adonai Mitchell is a late first rounder, and if he is, then then I'm taking him. Or if he goes to a spot in the draft with the draft capital and the landing spot that makes sense that he's a late first rounder, then for sure. If he goes to Kansas City, I'm taking him. Right? If KC takes him, I'm definitely taking him there. But there's probably a real world case where his draft capital and landing spot disappoint, and he kind of falls into the mid second, and then I would rather have Rice. But now big picture, like I agree, it's probable that this doesn't affect, or he may not be suspended. I mean, like you said, there's so much that we just don't know and probably can't know. That like a small suspension is probably the most likely thing that happens. But my concern is, again, what does KC think? And do they say, okay, dude, we can't trust you, we're going to draft somebody else? And that's what kind of tanks his value much more than a suspension would be.
It is worth noting that we do know of all franchises, we have some history with Kansas City of being a little bit, whether you believe this is right or wrong, being a little bit more forgiving with these incidents, in my opinion, at least, of, Tyreek Hill, with the numerous things that have come out over the years. They decided to give him a contract extension in the middle of all that. You have Andy Reid's brother with that whole situation, and pretty much defending him to the end of not quite saying that, but bring him back, the whole 9 yards. That's a messy situation too. So, we have some history of teams willing to look past it in the name of talent. Whether Rashee Rice falls into that territory, or whether they want to keep going with that mantra, that remains to be seen, but it will be good to see. Now, I know you put some trades in the dock for Rashee Rice, and we'll get into the running backs just after this, but 12-team Superflex starting 10, Rashee Rice and Brian Robinson for the 112, 212, and 312. And I did, by coincidence, just ask you about the 112. So I think I understand where you were going for with this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is Superflex, not 1 QB. But yeah, this is – I don't care about Brian Robinson, right? He's basically Gus Edwards. He's the younger Gus Edwards. He's the same player. So if you give me the 212 and the 312, I would just take it and try and reroll Brian Robinson into something, 2 shots at something better. So this is basically Rice for the 112, and I'm given – and this is a bit of – like if this was my only Rashee Rice share, I may have to think about this, but given this is a portfolio play, right? I've got a lot of Rice shares, so I am willing to get out for basically any first.
Yeah, you get to re-roll the dice on a very similar level of prospect.
Yeah, like Rashee Rice was a second-round pick last year.
Exactly. And in that 112 range in a 12-team league, you can get, you can maybe go with the day 2 quarterback, or you can go with the Ladd McConkeys of the world, the Troy Franklin potentially if he falls there, and so forth. There's a lot of, that is the one thing I got, 9 receivers deep in wide receivers, and I was realizing like, oh my, all these guys would be top 5 in other classes. Like it's such a deep class, so there's a lot of value in the back of the first round this year, especially in Superflex where it pushes them all down.
You hit on it, right? You're going to get a very similar prospect at that point if you want. So
so you get to re-roll it in arguably a better year. So not a bad deal at all. I understand where you come from, especially in Superflex. One other deal, and this one's a little bit too light for me, 2025 third and a 4th for Rashee Rice. Was this offered to you, I'm guessing?
Yeah, this was offered immediately after the news broke. So
it's understandable.
Yeah,
we've
I'm
all
not selling for nothing.
We've all been there.
I'm not giving you up for nothing. I'd rather just cut him than take this deal. Basically,
you got to. Sometimes you got to fish. Sometimes you got to throw some bait out, see what happens.
Yeah, nice try, but I'm not selling for zero.
Yeah, no, I'm not either. Either way, with all that in mind, it seems like a perfect time to switch on over, Joel. Talk about these rookie running backs. Now, we've all talked about, I touched on at the top of the show, this is an underwhelming group, but that's not to say there isn't talent. There is a lot of talent in this class. And honestly, in my opinion, kind of a decent amount of starting opportunities in the NFL for how this situation is kind of fallen out of. The New York Giants don't really have a running back right now. The Chargers don't have a running back right now. The Raiders, will they stick with Zamir White and Alexander Madison? Who knows? Carolina, are they content with that room? There's a lot of questions.
Dallas is wide open.
Dallas is wide open. Wide open. Will the Patriots find a partner, Ramondre Stevenson, or will they rock him with coming off an injury again? There's
Get Antonio Gibson, dude.
Oh,
The slander will not be tolerated.
I apologize. That's unforgivable on my part. I should not have forgotten that. Let's just jump right into what I imagine will be both of our RB1s. Jonathon Brooks out of Texas. Now, let me just ask you first: is he your RB1 in this class?
Yes.
Okay, he is mine as well. Now, literally, he's such an interesting prospect because I think the Quinn Ewers injury did wonders for him. As more, I don't know, if morbid's the word, but as sad as that sound, he was finally asked to okay, we're gonna have to lean on you for a little bit here while we have this other guy at quarterback who can't throw worth anything. And he was able to do it. He is such an athletic freak. That is next. I don't remember the last prospect I've watched with acceleration like he has. There's a lot of other things in his game that I have questions about, but his acceleration and ability to get to the second level is really something to watch. Now, you don't seem as excited about Jonathon Brooks as I am right now. I have my concerns, I will say that, but let me hear what you think about Jonathon Brooks.
I'm very excited, just that I'm very concerned about the knee injury. That's it. So
that is it.
I put this on Twitter the other day. If you compare that, like everybody says this class sucks, it's not great. But if you compare it to last year, like last year you had Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. You had two guys who were seen as kind of elite prospects. Other than that, like after that, it was
Tyjae Spears,
HN, who I loved and turned out to be awesome. But the community had a lot of questions about because of his size. You had Zach Charbonnet, who people liked and just got tanked by his landing spot. So, you didn't have elite prospects after that. So this class isn't that dissimilar from last year, except you didn't have the two guys at the top. I think without the injury, Jonathon Brooks would be the equivalent. Like he's not Bijan. He's not.
He'll be that level of standout in this group.
So if you compare him to like Breece Hall from 2 years ago, the only difference between Brooks and Breece Hall is Breece Hall had 2 extra years at Iowa State that Jonathon Brooks didn't have because he was playing behind Bijan, and he lost some time due to the knee injury, right? So I think Jonathon Brooks is as good, nearly as good in the same tier class of prospect as Breece Hall was. It's just he's got an ACL. He does everything well, right? He's a very good runner. He's a very good receiver. He's an excellent pass protector.
Yes, he is. That stood out to me.
Yeah. What doesn't he do well other than have a solid ACL in one of his knees? So yeah, I'm very high on Jonathon Brooks. I'm just very we saw Javonte Williams come back off of his ACL and just be kind of a shell of him. I expect Javonte Williams to be better this year, but you're basically conceding that you're probably going to lose a year of a running back to an ACL recovery, where we know his history has shown that these guys don't come back to full strength the year after their ACL. It's very rare. Like Breece Hall was the exception. Look at Saquon Barkley after his ACL was not the same guy. Javonte Williams was not the same guy he was before he got hurt. So that's, and it extends to other positions, right? Chris Godwin recently, that he took the better part of a year to get back to who he was after his ACL. So, and it happened in November, right? This wasn't like a September thing, wasn't an off-season thing where you can say, okay, by the time training camp rolls around, he should be good to go. I think this is I love this guy as a prospect, but I think you're probably throwing away the first half of his first season, and he's probably not going to be the guy you expect him to be for the entirety of that first season. So you're kind of wasting, the rookie prime year of a running back, and it's just not a great situation.
Before I give some rebuttal to that, I want to point out a good thing about your Gator. Be sure to join us on YouTube. Ask some questions for us right now. It comes through a lot better on YouTube. Plus, if you hit that subscribe, it really does help. Plus, you can follow along with all these amazing shows that Club Fantasy has. So be sure to check out on YouTube. And Gator, I do want an answer for you having Jonathon Brooks at RB5, because I'm going to need some explanation for that on what 4 running backs you like over that. But as for Jonathon Brooks, first off, I want to echo and hammer home the point of his third down ability is really special for a 20-year-old running back. That is, he identifies blocks. I thought he did a great job against Bama in doing that. And he has solid hands. He runs solid routes. My only concern is like you said, the ACL and the fact that his best attribute is that acceleration, that burst, and just going. That's a physical ability that is, we have to ask ourselves of what we're going to see after the ACL. It should be fine long term. He's young. It's one injury. We've seen plenty of running backs have a good career after having one torn ACL in their career, but it is concerning. And then the only other thing is kind of along the same lines of this was the first year where he saw carries, and it wasn't an exceptional amount of carries. It was 187. He never saw more than 30 in the 2 years prior to that. So I'm not going to dock him for that because he's at Texas. I understand why he didn't get touches, but he did, suffer an injury. And in the first year, he was kind of given a workload, and he was never asked to be a 20 carry a guy game because of Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy, and A.D. Mitchell. It's an offense that was
Baxter, who's a pretty good back in his own right.
Yeah. It was an offense that was built. It's such a stacked offense. Like, if Quinn Ewers was the prospect we all once thought he was, that he should have won the Heisman with that room. It's really remarkable. But
don't get me started on Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, it's such an emotional roller coaster. But
Quinn Ewers was legitimately the worst player on that offense.
It's such a shame. Like that's why I've watched the Texas-Alabama game more times than I care to admit at this point, just because of how many first-round prospects are on that field, and it's there's so much talent on that Texas team, or there was so much talent on that Texas team. But yeah, he's a fun guy, Jonathon Brooks. But
he has the skill set to be a 3-down back in the NFL.
Yes,
because he can do everything he needs to do,
and that's the big thing. Next name up here we're going to talk about is Jaylen Wright out of Tennessee. Now, we've gone. We haven't talked too much about Jaylen Wright, but when we have, we've gone back and forth on him. What are your thoughts on Jaylen Wright out of the Vols?
He's my favorite prospect that has both knees intact in this class.
You just like your knees, man.
I do. I like intact knees and ACLs. I've compared him on the show, I think, to Aaron Jones in that he's very similar. He's very explosive. He's got a huge percentage of his carries went for 10 yards, good receiver out of the backfield. Just never got like a full carry snap share. Like he's splitting time basically his entire time at Tennessee. And I think that's going to be the case. I don't think he's going to be a full-time back in the league, but I think he will be very efficient. I think he will get some very high value touches. So, the thing about Aaron Jones was at his peak was, we love him, but why can't he get full-time snaps? And how great would he be if he got full-time snaps? He's probably really good because he doesn't get full-time snaps, and he's available because he doesn't get full-time snaps. So I think Jaylen Wright is a very similar player, a very similar prospect in that he's probably going to be really good. He's probably going to be really efficient, and he's going to be really good on a per touch basis. I think the ceiling on his touches is probably going to be capped.
Yeah, you don't get to 7.4 yards per carry by being a 300 carry guy. Exactly. That doesn't happen. Otherwise, we're talking about this as a very good running back class, and he's clearly the 101 of it. But he's a great athlete. Yep. And
great combine.
98th percentile. Yeah, 98th percentile at the 40, 95th in on speed score, 95th percentile in burst score on player profiler. Their worries are with BMI because of the size and everything you just said. But as long as the team recognizes that and they don't try to force him, which I don't think people will do in today's day and age, I think he would be a very good 1B. Like, what running back, if you could pair him with someone right now, where would you want him to go? Because I have an idea in my mind, but I'm curious if we're thinking of the same thing. I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. I apologize. Do you want me to talk first? Do you want me to go through?
No. I would like him on the Raiders so he could put Zamir White where he belongs as kind of the 2A, I guess. I think he would be a better. I think that could preserve value for both guys, right? So Zamir White, because I'm afraid that Zamir White is just going to get tanked if like a Jonathon Brooks or like a Braelon Allen goes there. I think Zamir White could just get kicked out, and because I don't think Zamir White's that good. But if you get a Jaylen Wright there, I think there could be enough volume for both of those guys to be fantasy relevant.
Where my head was at, and I understand, I like that point. I'm thinking Baltimore a little bit. And sure, it would be somewhat of a punt on this year, but he would be factoring in. We've seen over the last couple seasons of Derrick Henry kind of taking, not a smaller role. The man still has 300,000 carries a year, but he does take certain plays off because he has to. It's not his skill set, especially at this point of his career. And I think Jaylen Wright would be a perfect complement to that, and also a good succession option with, then spending a 4th-round pick down the line whenever Derrick Henry's gone. They have to pair Jaylen Wright with someone else. I think it'll be a good system for him, and that'll be a fun one. Jaylen Wright's someone that I'm going to dive into more because I feel like I still have unanswered questions. He's still so young. There's a lot of things that I'm really intrigued with his game, though.
I would love that.
I understand why you like him.
I would love that. I think that's a good spot for him, and I think that would, like you said, it'd be a great succession plan, and I think that would kick his value down to where you could probably get him in the 3rd round, and that would be fantastic.
3rd round?
If he went to Baltimore and had was going to be behind Derrick Henry, had like no prospect of getting anything close to full-time carries this year, I think that would really. This is a deep class, dude. Like, there's a lot of receivers in this class. There's a lot of the running backs are going to be there's going to be guys who are going to have better landing spots. So I think that could easily put his value into the 3rd round. Yeah, I would love that. That would be fantastic.
And even if it's the back half of even if it's the back half of the second, I'd love to get him for the back half of the second. If I could spend anything later if I could spend 208 and later on Jaylen Wright, I'd be very happy about that. I'd be very satisfied with that. But let's go on to another rookie running back here. This one's an interesting one that I've gone back and forth on after watching so much FSU over the last couple of years, and that's Trey Benson, a running back out of FSU. I don't know what the hell I feel about Trey Benson, man. Some place he looks great, other place he doesn't. He has good speed, he has decent size, and then he just runs into a wall half the other time. I don't know what to make of Trey Benson. I'm hoping that you can help clear it up for me.
I can't, because I feel the exact same way.
God damn, no. Well, then we're not helping anybody.
I mean, he's the classic kind of carry for nothing, carry for 20 yards, right? And just explodes. So, I just think that he reminds me a little bit of Isaiah Pacheco, in that sometimes he just runs into the back of his offensive line. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? Do you have any vision at all? And then sometimes he slides through a hole and goes for 40 yards. So, it's the inconsistency that's really frustrating there, because I agree with you 100%. I feel some games I watch and I go, what does anybody see in this? And then there's some things it's like, wow, this dude is really special. So it's the lack of consistency that's really frustrating.
Yeah, and then you do have some BMI concerns with the 6'2", 216. That's fine. It's not terrible of a build. Yeah, and I mean, he does have the 4.39 40 time that we got to see. He is a very athletic guy. He was asked to do a decent amount at FSU, although it was a pretty balanced offense all around. We have we have a decent receiving profile compared to the average college back. He did catch a decent amount of passes. So I understand the upside, and I understand why people are talking about him. But I think in an average year, I think this is a RB 7 to 10 type of guy, RB 6 to 9 type of guy. Maybe that's harsh. Maybe it's
no. I agree with that. He's not a clear elite prospect. He reminds me a little bit of Zach Evans, and that's kind of terrifying.
I can see that.
Doesn't have the off-field concerns that Zach Evans did, but
yeah. Trey Benson is an interesting name, and I'm going to be so. I think he's one of those more interesting guys of his range of outcomes in the draft in terms of draft capital. I think it's the biggest of the guys that we're going to talk about today. I could see him going in the early 3rd, and I could see him going in the 6th round, like Zach Evans or something like that. I could see him slipping. I could see that happening. It'll be good to watch in terms of seeing what he'll do in the NFL and seeing all that. So, where is he currently in your ranks?
I probably have him like 4th. I would have him after Braelon Allen. I would have him clearly after Brooks and Wright. So I can see the upside. I don't like, and like you said, I could also see him falling in this draft. Like, for fantasy players, it's a pick your flavor. For the NFL, it's going to be a pick your flavor, right? And so I could see him the way this is a very good class. Around the positions, right? There's a lot of really good prospects at very much more important positions than running back. So like I could see any of these guys falling into the 4th, 5th, 6th round. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah. And the only other thing I'll add with Trey Benson as well is that I honestly came away a little bit more impressed with his 2022 tape than his 23, which is not always the trajectory I like to see, to be honest. But I liked him more in 2022. And, when you factor in that was his first year at FSU, 2 years before that, he had a torn ACL at Oregon, which he was able to come over. 2 years after that, having his breakout year at FSU. It truly is such a, I can make a case either way for him of guys that there's reasons for him to succeed and reasons for him not. So he'll be interesting to see where he gets draft capital. But I'm going to go over to a running back that we are, I know we've hinted at, but I don't quite know your take on him. And I have firmly come to one conclusion after watching like tape until 2:30 in the morning on Braelon Allen last night. That's Braelon Allen out of Wisconsin. So I want to, before I talk about Braelon Allen, I really want to hear what you think about him because we know his age, we know his physical upside. There are the concerns, but what are your thoughts on Braelon
Allen? He needs for his best football to be ahead of him, right? So he's got his body style. He's like a prototype, right? He's what you want in a running back. Had a lot of kind of minor nagging injuries at Wisconsin, had a really disappointing combine. I thought he was going to be much more athletic than I thought he was going to have a really good combine. He had a really, really disappointing combine in that it was kind of below average, and I expected him to kind of blow it out of the park. So that's disappointing. Now, we've made this point before. He is ridiculously young, right? He can't buy a beer legally until the playoffs of next season. Right, January of 24 before he turns 20 or 25 until he turns 21. So he's really young. He started out at Fond du Lac High School as a linebacker. Didn't switch to running back until like his senior season when until he just hadn't even turned 17 yet. So there's an argument to be made that he gets NFL coaching, he gets kind of more experience at the position. He's just not instinctive, right? He's really good at he can find a hole, he can get through it. He's explosive in the second level. He can break tackles. He can get through the muck. He does those things really well. He's just not very instinctive. So, there's a case to be made that kind of as he develops as a running back, that there's a real big upside here because he's got kind of that prototype body. He's got the prototype. It looks like he has the prototype athleticism. He didn't test that way. So I'm not going to put too much into that, but so there's huge upside here. Like he could be a 3-down back. He could be a 3-down. Like I shouldn't compare him to Derrick Henry because he's very different than Derrick Henry. He's not that superhuman, but he could be that style of kind of bruising running back who can just stay on the field and take 300, 350 carries. But we haven't seen it. So yeah, he's the boomer bust candidate in this class. Like he could be elite. He could be AJ Dillon.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't even know because I feel like he's the type of guy that, and to go right along with what you're saying, that he will either be a long-term starter or he will not be anything at all. Like I don't really see the part-time role for Braelon Allen. I feel it's like you said, easily the biggest boom bust running back in this class. And I'm on the boom side. I looked at that man and I was wondering if a wide receiver was lining up in the backfield. To me, it's like if DK Metcalf put on another 20 pounds and played running back, that's what Braelon Allen is. And I'm all in. And Wisconsin was different this year than they were in every other year prior.
Yes.
They tried to throw the ball in Wisconsin, and that's dumb. Why would they do that? So, that was for the first time.
Because their offensive line sucked.
Yes, but that's even another reason for Braelon Allen's success because you have to break so many tackles at the line of scrimmage. Yep. But I understand the concerns with the vision. I saw some of that as well. He has a bad tendency of running with his head down at times, but when he runs with his head up, and like we talked about, incredibly young, those things he can improve on, especially if he gets a good landing spot, especially if he's a good coach with him, and especially if he has a great offensive line with a good interior. I want nothing more. It's just like Zach Charbonnet for me. I want nothing more than him to get a good spot. If he doesn't get a good spot, I don't know how it's going to work. But if he gets a good landing spot, if he lands in Dallas, Joel, I will be unreasonably high. I will be the trade ups I will make. The first row capital I might invest. I'd be so in on Braelon Allen if he gets to if he gets to Dallas or something like that. But at the same time, if he goes somewhere else, if he goes to I'm trying to think. If he goes to give me something bad, speak some bad stuff in the world. I don't even know. Hell, if he goes to the Giants, even though it's a great opportunity, I don't know if he's going to be able to do what he wants to do in New York. I don't know if he's going to be able to succeed
let's say this. Situation. If he had gone to a place like Green Bay before they did the Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs swap out.
Yeah. It'll be a little bit tougher.
Like now it's not going to happen because he's kind of the same guy as Josh Jacobs and he's the same guy as AJ Dillon and they brought him back. So yeah, there's really no, like they need a pass catcher there now, like a third down back now more than they need a Braelon Allen type. But if like before that swap out happened and it was Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon where you're looking at going into the year, he was kind of the perfect guy to kind of slide in behind Aaron Jones. And in front of AJ Dillon, but that would have seriously kind of tanked his potential workload for year one. So that would have been a bad spot for him fantasy wise.
Yeah, it's certainly a very wide range of outcomes for Braelon Allen in terms of where he goes. But I'm certainly a believer. If I have I mentioned my wide receiver, my guy in A.D. Mitchell, I think Braelon Allen is going to be my guy of this running back class, and I really hope I think he will get the draft investment. I agree with you that the combine hurt him because he didn't do any of the testing that we wanted him to see. The broad jump, bench press, which he repped out 26 on the bench press, which is pretty nuts, honestly. But at 20 years old. But yeah, Braelon Allen, I'm very high on. I'm very excited for what he can do. I really hope he gets high day 2 value. But let's move on to one other name here, and it's everyone's favorite. It's a third down back of this group. Everyone's favorite. Bucky, Irving out of Oregon. This guy I have not watched enough tape on. I will watch more of, but he is that quintessential third down back. The Tyjae Spears, not saying he's at all the same player as Tyjae Spears, but the Tyjae Spears type of role that every draft class has. So what are your thoughts on Bucky Irving? Can he carve out something significant, or is he just kind of that change of pace guy?
Yeah, but he's a guy who I think the combine really hurt him.
Yes. For sure.
Braelon Allen had a disappointing combine. I don't think it really affects him because he's kind of showed that athleticism and, because of the age and all that stuff. I don't think that really affects his draft stock any. Bucky Irving had a really bad combine when you expected him to kind of, show elite speed. He was really slow. So for that style of player, I think that's much more important. And he really disappointed. So yeah, like you said, there's really no upside for him to be anything. If that's legit, there's really no upside for him to be anything more than like a Darren Sproles type. And that's just so limiting for fantasy. Like there's no scenario where he's even an Aaron Jones level runner. Like he's just going to be like a satellite back. And so, yeah, for fantasy wise, that really, I think that really hurt him quite a bit.
Yeah. To me, he streams roster clog. It's somebody that, we look at him. He might have a break off a nice catch for a touchdown, or he might have 6 catches on a day for 50 yards and maybe a score. There's something where if he gets to a high passing offense that actually uses the running back, there's a world where he could be fantasy relevant, but you're still going to struggle to pick those games. Like I think his ceiling is like a Deion Lewis, and even then, I think that's giving kind of a lot of credit because Deion Lewis was quite a good player in his prime. But I do have. He's someone I'm going to dive into more, so I don't want to talk too much on now just because I don't want to say something I'm going to end up backtracking. But it's
interesting that you say Deion Lewis because, like, my comparison was James White, and James White, who's a much less good actual running back, just fantasy-wise. Like, his value was – his quote-unquote value was, like, third down pass catcher role, and that's – like he's back end rosterable. You need a guy in a pinch, you can throw him in there because he's probably going to get some pass volume, but never a guy you're excited to start.
Yeah, it's there's only so much upside in my opinion with somebody who's 5'9", 192 that is classified as a passing downs back. Yeah, he saw 13% target share in college, which is really good, and yeah, ran a pretty middling 40 of what was that time? That was a 4.55. That's not quite what you want to see in the guy that is
not for a guy his
not the
size.
pony that you want to see. Yeah, so not exactly overly high on Bucky Irving for his ceiling for fantasy, and as we know with running backs, the floor is basement level. Now another guy that kind of gets classified in a similar boat, but has a little bit more of that rushing upside to some, MarShawn Lloyd out of USC. Let's see, Caleb Williams, running mate. We've talked about him a little bit on this show. You're lower on him than a lot of the truthers out there. So, what are your thoughts on MarShawn Lloyd?
So let's go back a couple of years when I was higher on Kyren Williams than like literally anyone, and like not tooting my own horn, I didn't think he was going to be this good. But the reason I like Kyren Williams because I thought he was going to get snaps because he's good at everything that coaches care about, right? He's good pass protector, good receiver, good enough runner, takes care of the ball. MarShawn Lloyd is the exact opposite of Kyren Williams, is that he is really bad at things that coaches care about. Bad receiver, terrible hands, terrible pass protector. I don't see how this guy gets snaps. I don't see how a coach is going to trust him to put him on the field enough for him to be relevant.
Now, before I get
and I don't think he's good enough. I don't think he's good enough at the running back things to kind of overcome that.
Yeah, I want to quickly address Greg's comment here. Greg, it's okay. We might be bringing up a certain Michigan running back next. Yeah, we're not done yet. This is a show, and if you've tuned in before, we've gone over the hour mark more than once. But
it happens.
Either way, MarShawn Lloyd, it happens to the best of us, and honestly, I think it's good. But MarShawn Lloyd, the big rise was the Senior Bowl. It was the Combine because he annihilated the Combine, and that was awesome. Or no, he wasn't at the he was at the Combine, right? These aren't pro day numbers that I'm looking at properly. But yeah, so
he ran a good 40.
Yeah, he ran a good 40, got the 4.46, did 25 in the bench press, which was more than I thought he would do. Especially, with he has the size, but I like him because he can do it all, but I worry that he doesn't do one thing well enough. That's the thing. And I think really in the NFL more and more and more and more and more, we see guys that are really good at certain things, and that's why we see rotation backs. Why we see guys that are able to fill one role. They do one thing well, and then they have someone else go in that does something else well. And I don't know if MarShawn Lloyd does that one thing well enough because he won't get draft capital to be an every down back. That's not going to happen, right? Where he's going to go somewhere where it's going to be his ceiling is that he goes to a murky situation, like the a Raider situation where he could find a role there. He can find a role, but will he be enough? Will he get goal line carries? Probably not. I don't know. It gets sketchy. So he's a guy that obviously with all these guys, draft capital matters, but I don't know if he's going to get the capital. I think he could slip to day 3, and that would really be quite a knock on his value.
I think he's definitely slipping to day 3. I don't see a coach who's going to kind of bang the table and say, we got to draft this guy.
Yeah. If it happens, it'll be that one team. That one team could still try to wait to day 3 to do that. I don't think he's going to have a huge talk in front of him. But honestly, let's jump right into it. Why shouldn't we? Let's go right into the Blake Corum talk because people are asking, people want answers, people want to know. Greg did say that he is his top running back prospect, calling him the most pro-ready, best vision, very strong in short yardage. Long speed is his weakness. Yes, long speed is certainly his weakness. For Blake Corum out of Michigan, he is that big boy bell cow, or I don't know about big boy, but he certainly carries the workload. He's that guy that will work you in between the tackles. But we had the injury a year ago. We had a little bit of inefficiencies at times. What are your thoughts on Blake Corum?
So I'll just say thanks to Greg for stopping in. I'm going to very respectfully, and there are a lot of people who have that opinion. I don't see it. I don't see anything in his game that makes me think he's going to translate to the next level. Like when he was really successful in putting up numbers, he was running through holes the size of Connecticut. And if you look at his, like the Ohio State game, the games against teams with great defenses, it was a very different story. So, he just, he's like, if you take someone of a similar size, like Kamani Vidal of Troy, who's maybe half an inch taller and like 10 pounds heavier than Blake Corum, like I look at that and go, I see a player here. I don't like the size is going to be an issue, right? The size is going to be an issue. He didn't have a great combine, like didn't kind of blow things out of the water. He was fine. It wasn't bad, but it was for someone that size, I expect a monster combine. It just didn't happen. I just don't see anything special here. I really don't. And so when you take that size into consideration, there's going to be, there are people who like him. I'm willing to be wrong. I don't see it.
And I understand that. I completely understand that because I'm closer to being on that side of it than I am being on a pro side of it. Greg did bring up last year coming off that major injury I was talking about. He did still score on 75% of his goal line carries, 3, and that's why he feels like a muscle hamster type. That's I think it's the second time in as many weeks we might have mentioned him, and that kind of feels what it seems like what it is for me. But I tend to lean more on your side because I am worried about that lack of top tier athleticism with the size. The size really does concern me. I don't like 5'8", 200 or 205, whatever he is right now. I don't like
5'7"
that build. 5'7", even worse. That's just not the build that I want because that build doesn't get 250 carries in the NFL. And that build also doesn't usually come into the NFL with 400, 500 touches. He has a lot of tread already on the tires, which I don't really care about as much. I'll say that, the tread on the tires in college, I think it's an overrated thing about it weighing into the NFL and longevity and all that. But I worry about how he'll fare on the next level with the size that he has in a non-Michigan system, which would be the best situation for any running back in college football, was running behind Michigan. So I have my concerns, and he didn't test well enough to alleviate my concerns, right? And I agree with Gator right here. I have a great story. I am really rooting for Blake Corum because last year was awesome. But this year gave us the reasons. This year felt like it almost gave us the answers to the questions we had the year before, of can he dominate when everyone's looking at him, when the offensive line might not be opening up ship-sized holes. And we got somewhat of an answer that it took a bit of a step back. So I have my concerns. I'm rooting for him, just like Gator said. I worry about where he ends up. But if he ends up in Los Angeles, let's talk that out because he obviously the Jim Harbaugh connection is the big one going around. That Jim Harbaugh is going to take all of his Michigan guys, J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, they're all going to Los Angeles right now. So if he ends up with the Chargers, does that change your opinion at all? I know we don't factor in. I know we shouldn't pivot to landing spots too much, but with running backs, there's always a little bit of an exception.
No, if anything, it might buy him more chances. But I just, like I said, I don't really care. I just don't think he's that. Now, like I said, I could be wrong. Like there are a lot of people who really like him. I will stipulate that, and so I could 100% be totally wrong on this. I just don't think he's good enough. And we talked about, you brought up the Doug Martin comparison, and which I made to Kamani Vidal, who's kind of basically the same size player. Doug Martin's career was like 2.5 years, right? It's
whoa.
His effective career was like 2.5 years. These guys do not last. Like you're not buying this guy's probably not going to last until the end of his rookie contract. And so if that's the guy you want to invest in, you want to sink a second round pick into that, cool. Just not for me.
I did remind myself of Doug Martin because remember it was every other year that he was actually good. But that
exactly.
wasn't even that. My
memory, but 2.5 years of actual production.
Of him is, yeah. So and that's kind of what it is. And to answer Greg's question as well, although I think he looked it up before I got to it, but he mentioned at the combine at 5'7", 3/4, and I believe it was 208. But either way, you give a couple pounds here, a couple pounds there, but you're not going to be getting Many guys will be looking for more inches, and I don't think Blake Corum's going to be finding any. So
he's going to be an
anyway,
outlier. Like no matter if he's successful, he's going to be an outlier.
Yeah.
So if
we don't see 5'8", 200-pound bell cows.
Yeah, if you're comfortable betting on that, if you like him enough, take your guy, take your shot. I'm not going to dump on that at all whatsoever. He's going to be an outlier. So in the same way that Bryce Young was last year, like no matter if you like him, if you think he's that good, cool. And Carolina did, but that at that size, any success he has is going to be an outlier. So is that a bet you want to take?
Yeah, and that's the question. And the other guys that people will be placing bets on, Audric Estime, the Will Shipleys of the world, the Kamani Vidals, as you were saying, and we talked about Bucky Irving already as kind of one of those more later round targets. Of these guys or of any others, do you have any favors? Isaac Guerendo being a very popular riser right now in some circles. We talked about on the show a couple weeks ago. Are there any other of these guys? I am so out on Audric Estime, and I kind of like Will Shipley a little bit more than I want to, but I'm curious on your take.
I'm not super excited about any of them. Like we've talked about Kamani Vidal. I think he's the best case for Blake Corum. I think he's a better player. But I like I said, I don't think that size lends itself to a long NFL career. Shipley, I don't know what to think. Like he was a kind of an elite recruit and just never lived up to that billing at Clemson. Clemson had other problems, but
Clemson had a lot of problems.
Yeah, Clemson had a lot, but I'm kind of concerned about that. Estime, he's not going to catch passes, so yeah, your best case is a Gus Edwards type, a AJ Dillon type, and he ran a really slow 40, which didn't help. I think his footwork is kind of good, but I don't. How much fantasy value is he going to have? Like, if he's, what is he ever going to be a guy that you want to start? There's just going to be so many better options. He's always going to be a fallback. I don't see any fantasy upside there.
I have beef against Audric Estime for no reason, and that's only because I have a friend who's a Notre Dame fan who called him, the best running back in the class, and I just so wholeheartedly disagree with that. And also because he's one of those guys, which is no fault of his own, but people are going to Audric Estime truthers are going to be spending this time, the next few weeks, pointing at the Pro Day 40 and not pointing at the Combine one, where that thumb on that stopwatch took a good extra second to click in Notre Dame, where, he ran a 4.71 at the Combine. He ran a 4.71. That's abysmal. Ran a 4.58 his Pro Day. Oh, yeah. Sure he did. That man is a 4.65 max. Not that good. But I just don't.
Let's just say
he's a classic Notre Dame back, man. He's a bigger Kyron Williams. I didn't like Kyron Williams. I know he's good, but
in deference to your friend, if this was 1975, he probably would have been the best prospect in this class.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, if it was 2007, he'd be a solid one. But it's the average day, and that's why I like Will Shipley and why Chris brings it up. As I was saying, he's going to be that third or fourth round rookie draft steal because I can see Will Shipley carving out a Jamal Williams role. That's what I kind of see with Will Shipley. He's better on third downs. Yeah, he can work third downs for sure, and I think he can work goal lines in some situations, depending on the roster and the rest of the talent around him. But I think he's the best of the committee backs in this on day 3. So if I'm taking a dart throw, that'll be him for me.
Yeah, that high school prospect evaluation still carries some weight, right? There's going to be teams that are going to say, 2-3 years ago, this kid was an elite prospect coming out of high school. Let's see if Clemson just screwed him up so bad that the situation screwed him up so bad that there's more at this level that we can get something out of. So I could see him being a guy that ends up higher in the draft than people expect.
Yeah, and he also wasn't that. He wasn't bad.
No, he wasn't terrible.
He wasn't. Yeah,
he just never lived up to his billing.
Yeah, exactly. He never got up to that first round capital that people thought he was capable of, or even that second round capital. Appreciate the kind word, Greg, as well, about loving your show. We love having you in here.
Yeah, for sure.
And also
Appreciate
adding, I think Gator sums this up well, as saying they're all tactical dart throws, and that's what they are, and that's what day 3 running backs will be.
very much so.
We grab them, we hope we see good training camp headlines, and we sell off those training camps headlines, or you have that flag playing player that you stamp it on there, and the people that loved Kyron Williams and got him late because of the terrible combine he had and held him for a year, they get to reap the benefits of that.
So big picture, like.
Sorry, we got a DJU comment, and I forgot about DJU.
So if any of these guys get the Tank Bigsby hype in preseason that happened last year,
yes,
move them.
That's it.
Just sell into that hype.
That's exactly it, and that's what a lot of these guys will get at some point. Of someone's going to call Bucky Irving and Christian McCaffrey because they both catch passes. Someone's going to do. We see him in that Christian McCaffrey role when he gets drafted to Carolina, and you're going to be able to sell him for a second after spending a third on him, But Gator also saying, listen, and this is the big thing here. Be sure to hit the likes and subscribes. We try not to pound the table on it or anything like that, but it really does help the show. And we've seen this viewership rise over recent months, which we massively appreciate. We've talked about a lot on the side. And it's been so awesome to see and so awesome to see you guys on this journey with us. So be sure to hit that subscribe for all the other amazing Club Fantasy FFL content that's out there, because we're certainly not the only show. Exactly, including Gator Show, because Gator shows on Monday are absolutely stellar, and I'm certainly going to catch tomorrow's. I'm going to set alarms, and I'm going to be there. But either way, let's get into our do better trades that we always get into. Do better right now. Let me pause. I am on different my Wi-Fi, so it is bumping up and down. Quote of the I am not saying that Bucky Irving is this year's CMC. Don't you dare do that to me, Gator. That is me saying that the assistant running back coach is going to say that. Someone's going to post on ESPN on Instagram, and it's going to go viral. Like that's what I'm saying. Let's not do that to me, huh? Hey. That's dangerous. Jesus. All right. I know that you got a couple good ones in here, and one of which being a Sam Howell and a Christian McCaffrey trade, just like we were just talking about. So let's pull it up right here. 12 teams to reflect starting 11, tight end premium, Sam Howell, Christian McCaffrey, and the 304 for Joe Burrow, 104 in 2025 second. I will smash the Joe Burrow side, and I imagine you're going to be on the same thinking with me.
Yeah, like I put this on the group chat for the show. This isn't the worst trade I've ever seen, but it's pretty bad.
It's close.
I have the Burrow side. I said,
kidding. I try. That's why you're on the show, and not
if like McCaffrey's on the other side, so it's not it's not a disaster trade, but you're still getting a really good player. But I would take the 104 over McCaffrey pretty easily. Obviously, in his Superflex, Burrow's going way ahead of him. And I said in the group chat, if the best player in the deal is the tax to make the deal happen, that's probably a pretty bad deal. So, if you go Sam Howell, McCaffrey, and the 304 for the 104 and a second, and next year's second. All right, it's not something I would do, but I could maybe kind of squint and see it. But then you're throwing in Joe Burrow for free. Come on, do better, people.
Throwing in Joe Burrow for free in a super flex is quite a phrase that we have mentioned on this show here. Exactly. But another trade here: 12 team super flex starting 10, tight end premium. Alec Pierce, JSN, Pat Fryermuth, Brevin Jordan find his way into a deal. Good for Brevin. And the 206 for James Conner, Nico Collins, and Kyle Pitts. What is Brevin Jordan doing here? Who asked for Brevin Jordan? Did you ask for Brevin Jordan?
What is Alec Pierce doing here? I mean, this is
okay. At least Alec Pierce is at draft capital.
All right, sure. This is like the classic handful of magic beans trade, right? And this happened. This offer came through. I have the Nico side on this, so this offer came through right after the Stroud or the Diggs trade. So yeah, props for
you got to sell Brevin Jordan. You got to sell Brevin Jordan before the value dips too much. Yeah.
Respect the hustle, but yeah, there's no way this deal has happened. In a tight end premium, would you give up Pitts for JSN?
No,
I wouldn't either.
Certainly not.
So. Yeah, so
not on the slightest.
So basically, I'm supposed to give up Nico Collins and James Conner for nothing.
That's somebody that was so high on JSN. Yeah, it's a do better for sure, because that's someone that And JSN is such a hard person to evaluate right now that they're looking at their last year investment. They're looking at, hey, I spent the 102 on this guy probably, and I want to get 102 value. But nobody's going to buy him for 102 value. That's just,
No.
I mean, in Superflex, obviously not 102, but I'm thinking one, you know what I mean? Second non-quarterback off the board. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is probably someone who went on Twitter and saw that somebody gave up Pat Freiermuth in a second for Kyle Pitts or something like that and said, hey, let me see what I can do with him and a bunch of other guys I don't want.
And maybe Joel thinks that Nico Collins is now dust suddenly. Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't.
No, yeah, exactly. That's what
we
both love Nico.
I would not take Pierce, Jordan, and Freiermuth for Connor. Based like I could see it happening if you valued Freiermuth, but like based on the way I build my rosters, I value James Conner because he's a cheap ass running back that I can start whenever he's healthy.
Yeah.
And so I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So
like,
yeah,
I think Connor's worth Pierce, Freiermuth. I'm not looking at Brevin Jordan in this deal. I refuse. Pierce, Freiermuth, and the 206. I think is fair for James Conner. Because I think James Conner, or even just Pierce in the 206. I think 206 is fair for James Conner. So, with that in mind, I'd probably rather have the 206 slightly. But then you're getting Nico Collins and Kyle Pitts for JSN. And we just established that I would take both of those guys over JSN right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, I would take Collins over JSN easily.
As would I. Yeah, nothing changed with Stefon Diggs for that. But Kenneth Walker, the third. Marquise Brown, the 112 and 312 for Justin Fields, James Conner, Nico Collins, and 25 first. And you added that this is the same league that we were just talking about with the last trade. So a little bit better.
Yeah, this isn't terrible. I just this is someone who's trying to come to me and buy low on multiple sides, right? They're going to buy low on Fields, buy low on Connor, buy low on Nico, and then swap out the 112 for a 25 first, which I'm not doing in any way whatsoever. No chance. Like 112 and 312, I would not give up for the 25 first. Like that's a deal I'm trying to make on the other side. Like if I can give up the 112 and a 312 and get a 25 first, I'm doing that all day long. So I'm not doing that the other direction. I don't care about Marquise Brown. Like his only value to me is someone I can throw in a deal. Like he's a deal maker, right? I can throw him in as a guy I don't care about to get the deal done. Kenneth Walker's fine, but I'm not giving up Nico Collins for him because that's what this trade basically is. So yeah, this isn't as bad as the other deal, and this happened basically right after the other trade happened. So a couple hours after the Steph Diggs trade. So again, some different team, not the same team. So two of my league mates were trying to get Nico Collins very, very cheap, and they were barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, the wrong tree. I respect the hustle though, because I would have died. I was
exactly
the exact same thing.
Respect the hustle.
Yeah, gotta respect the hustle. Now, Joe, we got one more trade from you, and I won't lie, I'm gonna tease a little bit. I forgot I did one dynasty trade this past week. One, and it's a blockbuster. It's in here. We'll talk about it in a second. But 12-team Superflex, starting 10 tight end premium. Keenan Allen for a 25 second. This seems fair. You noted on the doc that this is not an awful trade, and it seems right. It seems right of you're gambling on someone that can help you significantly this year. But he's also old, and it also could be, it's a change of scenery that he's never had before. What are we going to get for Keenan Allen? 25 second seems like a fair risk assessment.
Yeah, this is what I took Keenan Allen in this trade, and I don't think I would want to give up, depending on where it was. I don't have a second in this league, so it had to be a 25 second. But I'm not sure, a mid-second and above, I don't think I want to pass for give up for Keenan Allen. But a 25 second, I'll do that on a team that needs a wide receiver, or needs a wide receiver 4. I'll do that. I'll kind of push that need onto next year and try to backfill that spot with a guy I think could get a lot of targets in that offense, because I think he's a guy that Caleb Williams is going to lean on. So again, it's a guy I don't expect to play 17 games, but that's fine. He's the wide receiver 4 on this team. So yeah, I'm okay with that.
If you get 6 or 7 wide receiver top 15 wide receiver weeks, that's worth the 25-second as a contender.
Yep.
Easily. Especially
100%.
if it ends up being a late second, 2 years down the line or a year down the line. So yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think these are good moves for contenders to make that sometimes they're scared to make, but it's okay. You can get that second back, I'm sure. Now, Joel, I want to set the stage here. This is monumental. This changed the shape of my team, and it also fits everything you know about me, right? This is me getting rid of someone I'm lower on, I think would be fair to say, for someone I'm quite high on. Someone that I think has a great opportunity. Do you have any guesses on who that person could be before I put this in here? Great opportunity. Best one he's ever had in his career.
I'm intrigued.
You are intrigued. Yeah, so I traded Kenny Pickett for Sam Darnold, and I am over the moon. I sent this to someone in my league, and I said, let's shake up the league. And I can't emphasize how happy I was when he accepted this. I got rid of Kenny Pickett. I got Sam Darnold. Honestly, I will trade Sam Darnold back to the guy if Sam Darnold works out somehow. But listen, these are the deals that I get done, with some hard work, some grit. I'll change one first-round talent for another first-round talent. What are your thoughts on my deal?
I think it's fascinating. This is a one quarterback league where neither one of these guys should probably be rostered.
I don't. So, I was about to cut Kenny. So
I was going to say I don't know why the other guy would take Kenny Pickett. I don't know what value he would have, especially in a one quarterback. So yeah, I think this is a win for you.
Looking at cutting him. Yeah.
Darnold, like we've talked about, there's a world where the Vikings just make their 2 picks and don't make that trade, and Darnold becomes their starter. So
with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, oh my God, it'll happen. If Sam Darnold starts this year, it's gonna happen. We're talking QB1, we're talking franchise quarterback, talking NFC North champion. Sorry, Joel. It'll all come to happen if they just trust Sam Darnold. He took basically a year off. Might have lost to Carson Wentz with the San Francisco offense, but that's not the point. Greg saying they interviewed Keenan before his draft, and great kid. He is,
that's awesome.
A long year in the league. Yeah, that's an awesome thing that that you're able to do. I'm jealous. And yeah, Chris adding Billy Bean moves. Yes, it is. We play Moneyball. We play to win.
Absolutely.
Sam Darnold helps my locker room far more than Kenny Pickett. We've already had that established. We have tape on the map.
There is a scenario where Sam Darnold is a starting quarterback in a 1 QB league. There's no chance that Kenny Pickett is. So I'm surprised you got this done without having to throw something in, to be honest.
Yeah, I should have offered Fab I might still offer him Fab just for letting me do this. For context, I did immediately. He is the Jalen Hurts owner.
Okay, all right.
That does provide some level.
That makes a little bit of sense. Yeah.
He also has no draft capital this year to add someone in there. His other one is Russell Wilson, who might could lose the job to Justin Fields at some point. So there's, I guess, some level there.
All right. I can see. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Okay. It's a win-win for both deals. I'm all about win-wins
at
the end of the day. And I'm
there you go.
That's I can't believe I was able to do that. I'm so happy. Either way, that kind of wraps up our show here. We ran through our Dynasty rookie running backs. We hope it helped. Ran through a few trades, talked about the Rashee Rice situation, and talked about all of it, as well as the Stefon Diggs trade that happened last week, because we've had a little bit of a layoff. But we're back on Sundays. We're back to the normal schedule. Have the NFL draft coming up in a couple of weeks. And even better, Joel, we have wide receivers up on next week's show. Now,
yeah, that should be much more fun than the running backs. We're probably going to go long on that one because, for sure.
It depends on the news. We talked 30 minutes on Rashee Rice and Stefon Diggs.
Yeah, so trades would be cool, but hopefully there's not a knucklehead situation like the Rashee Rice thing that we have to talk about. So, yeah, we might go long because there's a lot of receivers to talk about.
Yeah, so we got a good show coming up for that one that you guys should definitely check out, because if any of these position groups are worth looking at, it's certainly the wide receivers, and you're going to hear me just gush about A.D. Mitchell. He's that man. It's going to get first-round capital for a reason. And then everyone after that is going to be such a difficult – I'm having trouble ranking those 5 to 10, so you're going to help me with that next week too, Joel. But thank you all for tuning in to this week's show. It's been a blast. This has been a fun one. I'm doing a road trip recording from Connecticut here, if you've noticed the different background. But appreciate you joining me, Joel, in this longer morning here as I try to get out of my friend's house that nobody's in. And I I feel like I'm going to get evicted any second now, so I gotta get a move on. But thank you all for tuning in. It's been a blast talking to all you guys. Great to see all you guys in the comments. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to follow Club Fantasy FFL on Twitter, YouTube especially. Hit that subscribe. All that amazing stuff. Be sure to follow Joel here at the Joel Wirth. You can follow myself at Michael__Sicoli. Couldn't get one underscore. It's catastrophic.
You are squatting.
Yeah, I gotta. But either way, I am squatting. I am squatting because his parents currently are home, and once they could pull up at any minute now, and this could be a problem. So I'm gonna get a move on here. I'm gonna run out of this house. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a happy week. Have a safe weekend. Have a good Sunday. Enjoy.
Happy WrestleMania.
We'll see you next week.